So today we're going to be working with oil pastels, and this is just a brief video for those who haven't worked with oil pastels before and would just like a little bit of extra tuition. So this is an example of a previous exercise I did with students, and this is looking at how we could emulate waves with oil pastel and looking at sort of ways of layering and blending. That's just to kind of give you an idea of the kinds of effects that are possible. And in terms of how it feels very smooth. This has been dried for some time now. Although it's not known to be a wet medium as such, which needs drying time, you do find once you put it onto paper, when it's kind of fresh it will feel a certain way, and when it's been sat around for a while it will feel a certain way. And that will also depend upon how many layers of pastel are actually in there. So this is something that I often use with students. Let me just take this off of here and place it centre stage. So this just shows you some of the techniques that we use. So this is what we call optical blending, and I'll bring this up closer to the camera as well. You see optical blending, when you see it close up, you can see it's almost like when you go for an eye test and they give you some of the tests at the opticians. As you come away from it, you'll see that the colours start to merge together and they almost create like a single colour. Now that's what we call optical blending, and the way that this is done is by taking usually several, say 2 or 3 different colours, and then just dotting them onto the paper next to each other and leaving some of the white showing through. So another way of blending is what I call pressure variance. So this is the same with any drawing medium that we work with. We always talk about the pressure that we actually lay onto the surface of the paper. Obviously the heavier pressure we use, the more coverage we're going to get. And then if we start to draw our hand away from the paper more and use a lighter pressure, what you tend to find is that you'll get a lighter coverage. And this can be quite a nice way of blending 2 colours together. So this almost creates like a variegated area, whereby you have heavy pressure here in blue, heavy pressure here in green, and then lighter pressure in green, lighter pressure in blue, and then you can start to bring those 2 colours together. So that's pressure variance. I'll show you it close up there and come away again. This is what I tend to call pressure blending, and this is just using the heavy pressure with the blue and the green. So this is 2 colours coming together and overlapping where they meet as well. And then the other thing you can do is you can also blend with your finger over the top where that join is. So that's another way if you want to have heavy coverage and you want to blend. I'll show you that close up. So there's pressure blending. The next way is laying colours horizontally. So you're literally just putting stripes of the same pressure next to each other, and this has the same effect as optical blending, whereby when you place the colours close together they start to kind of blend optically. So your eye is making those colours merge together, and the further away you go from that, the more that you will see they start to look like a blue-green rather than blue and green. If I show you that close up, it kind of reminds me of those Frazzles crisps, which are sort of beige and burgundy. We have them here in the UK, and they have like stripes and are this kind of size and shape as well. It does tend to look quite stripy, so I wouldn't say it's the smoothest way, but it's just an idea if you wanted to do something which combined colour but you wanted it to look slightly different. This is a denser kind of optical blending here, and this is caused by kind of scribbling in small patches and still leaving some of the white showing through. And here again I've just used a blue and a green, and I'll show you it close up. You can see the areas of white still showing through. So that's a denser optical blend, and I'll show you again just to compare it. That's the denser blending, and that's just a light optical blending. So you can see they give quite different results. This one here is layering, so all we're doing here is using whichever pressure we fancy, so whether that's a light, a medium or a heavy pressure, and then what we do is we just lay that down and then we lay the other colour on top. Now this one, I'd say a note of caution, it depends on your brand of pastel and the kind of quality that they are and how they tend to lay down. Some colours don't layer well together, so I would always kind of give a note of caution when using this technique to just test it on a scrap piece of paper first, just to make sure that you're laying down colours which aren't going to then sort of start to peel off or look very rough. Show you that close up. It's that one there. And then lastly, this is a technique. So we've laid heavy pressure here, and this is a light green and a darker green, and then gone over the top with a darker colour. Now that's the important thing here. When you layer underneath, you can layer any colour. When you go over the top, you need a darker colour. And then using something like this, which is just a bamboo skewer, or you can get bespoke tools to do it, or you might even want to use something like a small palette knife or a craft knife, but be very careful not to go through a piece of paper or canvas. And then all you do is you just scratch away. So sgraffito literally means scratching out. So all you're doing is you're taking off that top layer of colour in parts, so you're not doing it as a whole. And that's quite a nice technique to use either in itself or as a kind of adjunct to another project. There's also lots of other ways, but these are just the kind of basic ways of blending oil pastel. So that's blending, and then when we look at the oil pastels, this is the set that I tend to use, the main set. This is just a Faber-Castell 36 set. And there's quite a range of colours. I can see I also have a Rogue Reeves pastel that seems to have snuck its way in. This is my teaching set, so it does tend to get kicked around a little bit. So here you've got quite a nice mixture of colours. What you tend to find as well is you can have issues sometimes in winter when you come to use them. Don't store them in cold places or very warm places. Store them at room temperature, where you're not going to get huge fluctuations, otherwise you can get bloom coming up on the pastels. I can see here I'm starting to get bloom on this one for some reason. It could just be that it's been hanging around a while, or could be a number of reasons. When you first come to work with them on a piece of scrap paper, if you just kind of see how they work. Now this one feels nice, it doesn't feel like there's any resistance. It's a bit like using a crayon, except slightly more refined in terms of the sort of the feel and the sort of clumsiness of them. They're quite thick, they're a bit of a blunt instrument, as I like to say, but you should feel it kind of going onto the surface in a positive way. So that's what you're looking for. Let me try my bloomier one over here just to check that it's still okay. Again, this one lays down perfectly all right, so that all feels fine. But if you've kind of inherited an old set, or you have an old set that's been kicking around, do test it out first on scrap just to make sure it's okay. If it doesn't want to kind of almost flow onto the page and sort of feel quite easy to get onto the page, you might want to just warm the pastel up just using your body heat, just gently between your hands. Well, the other thing you can do is you can take a heat gun, and I wouldn't hold it very close to the surface. I'd hold it at least this far away, it's probably about a foot, and then just very gently wave it. You could use a hairdryer as well if you wish. If you've got a very powerful one, hold it back further and just warm the pastels up slightly, because sometimes if they are very cold, you might find that your result does vary. So that's about it really for a basic introduction to oil pastel. The rest should be revealed in the exercise, and you'll get to know more as you work with them too.